Juan Mendez Scott's Pool Party, Chapter 10. Laying Leona to rest. The June sun was relentless, shining down on the Ebenezer Church on Allentown Road as if mocking the sorrow that had gathered within its walls. It was thick and heavy heat, stifling in a way that made it hard to breathe. The scent of lilies and roses, overpowering and cloying, mingled with the faint smell of incense. Inside, the pews were filled with mourners dressed in black, their faces a sea of grief and disbelief. Leona lay in her casket, dressed in her cap and gown with her cap resting on her stomach, hands folded over it, a cruel reminder of the future she'd never have. Her face was serene, almost peaceful, as if she were merely sleeping. But the sight of her like that, so still and lifeless, tore at my heart. My guilt was a heavy, suffocating presence, wrapping around me like chains. Chris stood at the front, his face torn with tears and drawn, eyes red from countless hours of crying. He looked like a man on the brink of collapse, and seeing him like that only twisted the knife deeper in my gut. The service dragged on, each word from the pastor a nail in the coffin of my remorse. When we moved to Trinity Memorial Gardens and Mausoleum, the heat was even more oppressive. The freshly turned earth mixed with the floral arrangements, creating a sickly sweet aroma. We gathered around the grave, the mood somber and heavy with despair. Chris was inconsolable, his anguish raw and palpable as he watched Leona's casket lower into the ground. I could feel the load of my guilt pressing down on me, making it hard to stand, to breathe. I knew I had to say something, to try and make things right, but the words stuck in my throat. I approached Chris, my heart pounding. "Chris, I'm so sorry. He rounded on me, his eyes blazing with fury. "This is your fault, Ace," I said. "My fault. My girl is dead because of you." Chris's voice was a ragged shout, tearing through the quiet. "How is that?" She fell and hit her head on the edge of the pool. "No, Chris, it wasn't my fault. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Bullshit," he said, raising his voice, his face contorted with rage. "There was more in that drink than non-alcoholic, wasn't there? What the hell did you do?" "I swear, I didn't put anything," I started, but his words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. "You put something in her drink. You killed her." Chris lunged at me, but family members held him back, their faces stricken with grief and anger. Jenna pulled me away, her grip firm. "Ace, come on. Just let it go and come. Let's go." As we retreated, the sounds of Chris's sobs filled the air, mingling with the quiet murmurs of the other mourners. My mind was a chaotic swirl of guilt and regret, each thought sharper than the last. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't put anything in her drink," I said, lying through my teeth, my voice hollow. "I didn't do anything to make her." Jenna's eyes were filled with a mix of sadness and anger. "Ace, don't worry about it, okay? Chris just wants somebody to blame. Pay him no attention. Please. I was drunk, okay? I don't remember seeing her or seeing what she was drinking anyway." My voice cracked, the power of my actions bearing down on me. "I didn't put anything in her drink. She told me she didn't drink alcohol, so I gave y'all non-alcoholic drinks." "Well, that's what I mean, don't worry about it," Jenna said, her voice cutting. "She's gone, and it's nothing we can do about it now." The gravity of her words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the irreversible damage I'd caused. We stood there in silence, the sounds of the funeral fading into the background as I wrestled with my guilt. "What am I supposed to do now?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Jenna sighed, her expression softening. "You need to face the fact that Chris is trying to find someone to blame, that you did nothing wrong. But first, you need to stay away from Chris. He's hurting, and seeing you isn't helping." I nodded, my throat tight. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right for him. I'll find a way. But I did nothing wrong." The rest of the funeral passed in a blur, each moment dragging me deeper into a pit of despair. As we left the cemetery, the reality of what I'd done settled over me like a shroud. In the days that followed, the pressure of my guilt was a constant companion. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of Leona's lifeless body and Chris's anguished cries. My friends avoided me, their eyes filled with accusation and pity. I was a pariah and outcast in my own skin. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I found myself back at the cemetery. The air was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the funeral day. Earth and flowers was still strong, the quiet almost deafening. I stood by Leona's grave, the mass of my guilt almost crushing. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." As I stood there, the shadows seemed to close in around me, the reality of my actions a constant, gnawing presence. I knew I'd never escape this guilt, never be free of the shadow it cast over my life. In the distance, I heard a rustle, a faint sound that sent me shivering in fear. I turned, my heart pounding, but saw nothing. The cemetery was still and silent, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a reminder that my actions had consequences. And as I walked away, the force of my guilt a constant presence, I knew that this was only the beginning. The storm inside me was far from over, and the path ahead was dark and uncertain.